Welcome back to World History. We're at Roman numeral 2. Hopefully you were able to take care of the quiz that was assigned in yesterday's video. And now we're moving on with the actual war itself. Axis successes. Try to say that 5 times fast. Let's begin where we finished off at Poland. On September 1st, 1939, on a very testable date, Germany invaded Poland, starting World War II. Britain and France ordered Germany to stop. When Germany refused, the Allies declared war on Germany. Why was this the beginning of World War II? Why not another moment before? Because this is finally the moment in which the Allies are going to try to fight back against Hitler. Hitler had a new strategy to win this war. It was called a blitzkrieg. It means lightning war. And this was Germany's offensive. It was called that because of its speed and success. We're not going to see the trench warfare of World War I. Instead, Hitler's forces are going to move quickly and offensively across Europe. A couple groups associated with the Blitzkrieg include Hitler's Panzer divisions. This stood for Germany's armored forces, most primarily tanks. Another part of the Blitzkrieg included the Luftwaffe. This stood for Germany's air force, primarily planes. The Blitzkrieg was so successful. Remember, they had had some practice in Spain doing this. It was so successful that in less than 4 weeks, Germany's Blitzkrieg defeated Poland. The Soviets also helped invade Poland from the east. According to the Nazi-Soviet pact, Poland was to be divided up between the two nations. The Soviets were also given possession of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland. The first few of those countries fell quickly. Finland surprisingly held its own pretty well before eventually being defeated. This cast grave doubts on Russia's ability to wage war, of which Hitler probably took note. Letter B, Scandinavia. Between the times of the fall of Poland and the invasion of Scandinavia, Europe experienced what became known as a Sitzkrieg. The word Sitzkrieg means sitting war. What it means was there wasn't any fighting taking place during the winter of 1939 into 1940. While fighting took place in Eastern Europe, nothing had happened in the West. The Allies sought to blockade Germany, and foul weather had slowed Hitler's plan to attack West. 7 months of inactivity ended when Hitler invaded Scandinavia. In April 1940, Hitler invades Denmark and Norway. Hitler feared they could be used as Allied bases in the future. Both Denmark and Norway were caught by surprise. They had declared neutrality for this war. Denmark fell in just a matter of hours. Norway lasted a little longer and actually did a decent job at defending itself if it weren't for what became known as the Norwegian fifth columnists. A fifth columnist refers to traitors within a country. While Norway held on for several weeks, it would be traitors inside Norway who supported Hitler that would bring Norway down. The leader of the fifth columnists in Norway was a man by the name of Vidkun Quisling. He was the leader of the fifth columnists. You need to know that. He sabotaged weapons that couldn't be used when the German Navy arrived. And as a reward, he became the puppet ruler of Nazi Norway. Traitors do have that distinct infamy associated with them. You think of Quisling here, think of Benedict Arnold in America, think of Judas Iscariot in the Bible. Just to give you the end story of Quisling, after the war ended and he was on the losing side, he would be executed as a traitor to Norway. Letter C, France. In May of 1940, Germany invaded the Low Countries and France. Remember, the Low Countries stand for the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. If you look at page 490, it shows you a map of the German offensive. The French and British had placed thousands of troops on the French-Belgian border in case Germany sought to go through Belgium like they had in World War I. The invincible Maginot Line protected France from Germany directly. The weak link in the Allied defense was by the Ardennes forest. The Allies figured it would be difficult for the Germans to attack through there, so it was minimally protected. That's exactly where the Germans attacked hardest. By cutting through the Allied line, Germany was able to encircle the entire force. The Maginot Line was now worthless since no fortifications had been set up to defend against an attack from the French side. Holland and Luxembourg fell in a week. Belgium lasted 2 weeks. 350,000 Allied troops were trapped at the port city of Dunkirk. Yet suddenly the German army stopped its offensive. Hitler had ordered that the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, should finish off the Allies. But at the same time, bad weather grounded the Luftwaffe, and poor communication prevented the army from continuing the assault. Over the course of about 9 days, ships from Britain crossed the English Channel and transported the 350,000 Allied troops to safety. In your books, read page 491, The Deliverance at Dunkirk, to yourself. Once you've finished reading, please unpause the video and we will continue. While still a miracle, Churchill declared, "We must be very careful not to assign to this deliverance the attributes of a victory. Wars are not won by evacuation." And yet we would consider this a miracle. 350,000 men is a lot of men to lose early in this conflict. Those men will be needed later in the war. But yes, retreats don't lead to victory. When it became more evident that France was collapsing, Italy also declared war on France and Britain. Mussolini said, "I need a few thousand dead so that I can attend the peace conference to get my share in the spoils." Henry Pétain, he became the new leader of Nazi France, and he asked for an armistice with Germany. That's what you need to know about him. He became the new leader of France, and he asked for an armistice with Germany. And on June 22nd, 1940, something France didn't do in World War I, they surrendered to Germany. In the same railroad car in which the Germans had surrendered to the Allies in World War I, the French were forced to surrender to the Germans. France had fallen to the Blitzkrieg in just 42 days. Question might be asked, why did France fall so quickly? France fell quickly because many French leaders wanted the war to end quickly. They thought that a quick end would spare France the kind of devastation that had suffered during World War I. To save Paris from the destruction that had befallen many Dutch and Belgian cities, Paris was declared an open state, i.e., it was undefended. In fact, when the Germans entered Paris on June 14th, up to 80% of the population had fled. Many people would move back later. What became of France for the remainder of the war? It became known as Vichy France. According to the surrender terms, most of France, including Paris, came under German control. The city of Vichy became the new capital, and Pétain became its leader. Yet there were some who resisted. So all you need to know about Vichy France is that this became the area that was, this was the free area of France, but it was really controlled by the Nazis. Charles de Gaulle was one of the leaders who opposed France's surrender. And he lived from 1890 to 1970. He was the leader of what became known as the Free French movement that continued to wage war against the Axis powers inside or outside France. But the fact of the matter was, France had surrendered. Letter D. North Africa. Seeing the success of Hitler, Mussolini hoped to duplicate his successes in North Africa. Since Britain had to contend with Hitler, he hoped Britain would be too busy to fight in North Africa. By taking the region, Mussolini hoped to gain access to the oil fields of the Middle East. Italy invaded Egypt, but was repulsed by Britain. Unfortunately, Britain was able to fight back, unfortunately for Italy. Britain kicked Italy out of Egypt and back into Libya. To prevent a total collapse, Hitler intervened to help his ally. Germany's Erwin Rommel. You think you need to know about him? He's nicknamed the Desert Fox. Rommel arrived with his specially trained German forces. Although he often displayed his tactical ability, he was unable to win a crushing victory. He didn't have enough troops and support for this. By 1942, however, Rommel had re-entered Egypt and had advanced to within 70 miles of the British naval base at Alexandria. Letter E. Axis blunders. At the beginning of Hitler's rule, many of his generals did not trust his military judgment. After the fall of France, however, his military prestige increased to the point that his ideas were rarely challenged. As it will turn out, many of his decisions will prove to be military blunders. Number 1, the Battle of Britain. A little bit more information about Winston Churchill. Neville Chamberlain, remember he was the guy who appeased Hitler before the war, was forced from power after a speech by an opponent in Parliament who quoted from a 1653 speech by Oliver Cromwell. "You have sat too long here for any good you have been doing. Depart, I say, and let us have done with you. In the name of God, go." After a vote of no confidence carried against Chamberlain, Churchill was asked to form a government. He did so, taking office on the day the Low Countries were invaded, May 10th. He remained prime minister until elections were held in 1945. On page 493, there's a box entitled "Britain Prepares for Invasion." I want you to read that box for yourself. Once you have finished reading, please unpause the video and we'll continue. With France defeated, Britain stood alone against the Axis powers. The lull in fighting was only because Germany was preparing for another attack. This calm before the storm caused Britons to think about the possibility of a dark, terrible future. But the man who would lead Britain through its darkest night was a man named Winston Churchill. He lived from 1874 to 1965. He became the Prime Minister of Britain during World War II, and that's what you need to know about him. In one of his many speeches to encourage his people, he said, "We shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." Those speeches and others he gave motivated and rallied the people of Britain to continue fighting back against the German invasion. Operation Sea Lion was the name of the operation for Germany to use its amphibious invasion of Britain. It was Germany's code name for the invasion of Britain. The German plan was to assemble barges and transport ships in preparation for an amphibious invasion. Amphibious, of course you know, means both a land and sea assault. Hitler believed that once the Nazis had control of the skies over Britain, Operation Sea Lion could proceed. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today for the Battle of Britain. Hope you all have a good rest of the day, and tomorrow we'll find out what happens in Britain. Be good, do good. Bye.